We're just a short paddle from LNG Canada, the country's first ever large-scale liquefied natural gas export facility.
You don't get a lot of firsts these days, but for the first time, Canadian liquefied natural gas is heading overseas.
The emergence of LNG Canada as a pivotal player in the global energy landscape marks a significant turning point for Canada, a nation long tethered to its southern neighbor, the United States, for energy exports. On June 30th, 2025, a historic milestone was achieved when the LNG Canada export terminal in Kitimat, British Columbia, dispatched its first shipment of liquefied natural gas, LNG, to Asia. This event, rooted in real-world developments, ended more than 3 decades of Canada's near-total dependence on pipelines to transport natural gas to the United States. The significance of this moment cannot be overstated, as it represents not only a bold diversification of Canada's energy markets, but also a strategic response to escalating trade tensions with the U.S. under the Trump administration's tariff policies. The LNG Canada project, a $40 billion joint venture, is a testament to Canada's ambition to assert itself as a global energy exporter. Initiated by a consortium including Shell, Petronas, PetroChina, Mitsubishi Corporation, and Kogas, the project began taking shape in the mid-2010s. Construction of the facility commenced in 2018, following years of regulatory approvals and environmental assessments, with the first phase targeting a production capacity of 14 million tons per annum MTPA. A critical component of this infrastructure is the 670-kilometer Coastal GasLink pipeline, which connects the Montney shale gas fields in northeastern British Columbia to the liquefaction plant at Kitimat on the Pacific coast. Completed in late 2024 after overcoming significant logistical and environmental challenges, this pipeline opened a direct route for gas to flow to the terminal, enabling maritime exports without reliance on U.S. infrastructure. The decision to pursue LNG exports was driven by a combination of economic opportunity and geopolitical necessity. Historically, Canada has been a major supplier of natural gas to the United States, pumping an average of 8.8 billion cubic feet per day across the border. In 2024 alone, this trade generated an estimated $8 billion in revenue, underscoring the economic importance of this relationship. However, this dependence left Canada vulnerable to U.S. policy shifts. The re-election of Donald Trump in November 2024, following a campaign marked by protectionist rhetoric, set the stage for renewed trade tensions. On March 4, 2025, the Trump administration imposed a 25% tariff on most Canadian exports to the U.S., with a specific 10% tariff designated for energy products, including natural gas. This move was part of a broader strategy to bolster domestic industries and reduce reliance on foreign energy, reflecting Trump's America First agenda. The tariffs had an immediate and profound impact on Canada's oil and gas sector. Prior to this policy shift, Canadian LNG enjoyed a competitive edge due to its lower production costs, with the Alberta Energy Operator (AO) index averaging $0.714 USD per million British thermal units (MMBTU), compared to U.S. Henry Hub benchmark of $3.746 USD per MMBTU. The additional 10% tariff on energy exports erased this advantage, causing U.S. sale prices to soar and jeopardizing mid- and long-term contracts. For a country where nearly 100% of exported natural gas flowed southward, this represented an existential threat to its energy economy. The timing was particularly critical, as global demand for LNG was surging, especially in Asia, where nations sought cleaner alternatives to coal and oil amid climate commitments. LNG, a form of natural gas chilled to minus 165 degrees Celsius and converted into liquid form, reduces its volume by more than 600 times, making it an efficient commodity for international shipping. This process, conducted at the Kitimat facility using 2 state-of-the-art liquefaction trains supplied by JGC Japan and Fluor USA, enables Canada to reach markets without pipeline access. The plant, powered by British Columbia's clean hydroelectricity, positions LNG Canada as one of the lowest carbon footprint LNG exporters globally, aligning with environmental, social, and governance ESG goals. The first cargo aboard the Gas Log Glasgow carried 2.6 million tons of premium LNG and set sail for Asia on June 30th, 2025, marking the beginning of a new energy corridor. This shipment bypassed U.S. tariffs in the Panama Canal, reducing transit time to Japan, South Korea, or China from approximately 20 days to just 10 days, a logistical advantage that saves tens of millions of USD in shipping costs per voyage. The geopolitical context further underscores the urgency of this development. The loss of Russian natural gas supplies to Europe, following heightened sanctions after the ongoing Ukraine conflict, created a vacuum that Canada is poised to fill. Asia, meanwhile, has emerged as the primary market, with China, Japan, and South Korea racing to secure stable LNG supplies. Japan, which relies on imported gas for over 80% of its power generation, announced plans in early 2025 to add at least 20 million tons of LNG per year starting in 2026. South Korea proposed a 50% expansion of its LNG storage capacity over the next decade, while China inked long-term contracts to ensure supplies ahead of the 2025 to 2026 winter. Canada's entry into this market, facilitated by LNG Canada's Strategic Pacific Access, positions it as a geopolitically neutral supplier, free from the risks associated with traditional shipping lanes or U.S. pipeline monopolies. The project's realization was not without challenges. The rugged terrain of northern British Columbia, coupled with a freezing climate, drove construction and operating costs significantly higher than comparable U.S. projects along the Gulf of Mexico. Stricter environmental regulations mandated additional investments in emissions controls and biodiversity protection, ballooning the project's capital requirements. The joint venture partners faced elevated borrowing costs, prompting considerations to double capacity to 28 MTPA only if long-term offtake commitments from Asian and European buyers could be secured. To mitigate these financial pressures, the British Columbia provincial government introduced carbon tax and sales tax incentives, a move that sparked public debate over corporate social responsibility and community benefits. A cornerstone of the project's success has been its partnership with the Haisla First Nation, the indigenous community near Kitimat. The joint venture signed contracts worth 5.8 billion Canadian dollars with local businesses and the Haisla, creating over 50,000 jobs during the 7-year construction period. Haisla contractors were granted equity stakes in the Coastal GasLink project, enabling them to preserve their culture while sharing in the revenue stream. This collaboration not only addresses social equity, but also enhances the project's ESG credentials, a critical factor for attracting international investment. The first shipment on June 30th, 2025, was more than a commercial milestone. It was a declaration of Canada's intent to diversify its energy markets and reduce its vulnerability to U.S. tariffs. By leveraging its vast Montney shale reserves and direct Pacific access, Canada has opened a maritime route to Asia, challenging the dominance of established LNG exporters like Qatar, the U.S., and Australia. This turning point, driven by real events including Trump's tariff policies and global energy shifts, sets the stage for Canada to redefine its role on the global energy map. As the LNG Canada project gains momentum, it promises to reshape trade dynamics, offering a strategic ray of light amid the shadows of economic and geopolitical uncertainty. The departure of the gas law Glasgow from Kitimat on June 30th, 2025, carrying 2.6 million tons of liquefied natural gas, LNG, to Asia, was more than a logistical triumph. It was a seismic shift in Canada's energy narrative. This bold move, fueled by real-world tensions and opportunities, has thrust a $40 billion LNG Canada project into the global spotlight, promising to reshape trade dynamics and redefine Canada's geopolitical standing. As the world grapples with an energy crisis intensified by sanctions on Russian gas and Asia's insatiable demand for clean fuel, Canada's pivot from U.S. pipelines to maritime exports has ignited a high-stakes drama with far-reaching implications. The strategic brilliance of this shift lies in its timing. With Europe reeling from the loss of Russian natural gas following tightened sanctions in 2022 and Asia racing to secure alternatives, Canada sees a golden opportunity. Japan, dependent on imports for over 80% of its power generation, pledged in January 2025 to add 20 million tons of LNG annually starting in 2026 to phase out coal. South Korea announced a 50% expansion of its LNG storage capacity by 2035, while China, bracing for winter 2025 to 2026, locked in long-term contracts with multiple suppliers. Into this white-hot market stepped Canada, its first cargo arriving like a lifeline, cutting transit time to 10 days via the Pacific, half the 20 days required to the Panama Canal. Each voyage slashes shipping costs by tens of millions of USD, making Canadian LNG irresistibly competitive. LNG Canada's initial capacity of 14 million tons per year, powered by British Columbia's hydroelectricity and equipped with cutting-edge liquefaction trains from JGC Japan and Fluor USA, positions it as a low-carbon exporter, a badge of honor in an era obsessed with ESG, environmental, social, governance, standards. Starting in 2026, the project aims for 170 voyages annually to ports in Japan, South Korea, and Singapore, a record pace that could catapult Canada into the top 5 global LNG exporters. Reuters reported in June 2025 that partners Shell, Petronas, PetroChina, Mitsubishi, and Kolgas are eyeing a Phase 2 expansion to 28 million tons, with final investment decision looming as Phase 1 nears full output. This ambition, however, hinges on securing long-term contracts, a gamble that could either solidify Canada's rise or leave it vulnerable to market volatility. The economic stakes are enormous. Until 2025, Canada funneled 8.6 billion cubic feet of gas daily through U.S. pipelines, generating $8 billion in 2024 revenue. The Trump administration's 10% tariff on Canadian energy exports, imposed March 4, 2025, alongside a 25% tariff on most goods, spiked U.S. prices and stalled contracts. American buyers, accustomed to cheap Canadian gas, now face a Hobson's choice: pay premium prices for domestic LNG or navigate higher shipping costs from Europe and Asia. Meanwhile, Asian buyers, China, Japan, and South Korea, have embraced Canada's offering, drawn by its stability and tariff-free pricing. This pivot has slashed Canada's geopolitical risk, freeing it from U.S. pipeline monopolies and tariff threats, and earning it accolades as a reliable partner. Yet, the journey is fraught with challenges that keep the stakes sky high. Doubling capacity to 28 million tons demands tens of billions in new capital, a daunting prospect given northern British Columbia's punishing climate and construction costs, far exceeding those of U.S. Gulf Coast projects. Stricter environmental regulations have forced additional investments in emissions controls and biodiversity protection, while the provincial government's carbon and sales tax incentives, though helpful, have sparked public outcry over corporate favoritism. The Haisla First Nations Partnership, $5.8 billion Canadian dollars in contracts, equity stakes, and 50,000 jobs over 7 years, offers a social buffer, but also raises the pressure to deliver economic returns. This strategic pivot is a direct counterpunch to Trump's tariff war. The U.S. move, intended to shield domestic producers, backfired by pushing Canada to diversify, much like a chess player forced to rethink after a bold opponent's move. The ripple effect has been dramatic. U.S. LNG prices have soared, while Canada's maritime route to Asia has opened a new front in the trade battle. Analysts speculate this could awaken Washington to negotiate or ignite fresh tariff retaliation. The tension is palpable. Will Canada's bold play force a U.S. rethink or escalate the conflict into uncharted territory? Globally, Canada's move aligns with a broader energy revolution. The International Energy Agency, IEA, reported in 2025 that LNG demand is expected to rise 50% by 2030, driven by coal-to-gas transitions and sanctions on Russia. Canada's low-carbon LNG, bolstered by its indigenous partnerships and clean energy grid, is a perfect fit. The project's success could inspire other nations to challenge established exporters like Qatar and Australia, turning the energy map into a battleground of innovation and strategy. For Canada, this is a defining moment. The LNG Canada project is not just about energy. It's about national pride and economic survival. The first cargo's departure was a declaration that Canada will no longer be boxed in by its southern neighbor. Instead, it has spread its wings toward Asia, a region hungry for clean, rapid delivery fuel. But the question lingers: can Canada sustain this momentum against giants with deeper pockets and established networks? Phase 2's outcome will be the ultimate test, with massive capital costs and regulatory hurdles looming large. As LNG Canada vessels dock in Yokohama, Busan, and Singapore, the world watches. Will this strategic ray of light illuminate a path to energy independence, or will it flicker under the weight of competition and cost? The answer lies in Canada's ability to balance ambition with resilience. For now, the Maple Leaf Nation stands at a crossroads, its fate intertwined with the global energy crisis and the unpredictable whims of trade warfare. What do you think? Will Canada lead the LNG race or get swept away in the fierce currents ahead? The story is unfolding and every move counts.